Have you ever made a snap decision, then immediately wondered what really drove it?
Hmm.
Or maybe seen someone act in a way that seemed almost, well, automatic?
Yeah, definitely.
We like to think of ourselves as purely rational, making considered choices.
Right. In control.
But what if the seconds and minutes leading up to our actions are far more complex, influenced by things we don't even consciously notice?
It's exactly the territory we're exploring today.
Today, we're diving deep into a really fascinating chapter from Robert M. Sapolsky's incredible book, Behave, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst.
Hmm.
Specifically, the section called Seconds to Minutes Before.
Our mission for you today, really, is to unpack those immediate influences on our actions. The conscious ones, sure, but crucially, also those that operate totally beneath your radar.
Hidden triggers.
Exactly. We'll pull from biology, psychology, social science, all the cutting-edge stuff, to explore these hidden triggers that shape our behaviors, sometimes our best, sometimes our worst, literally in the blink of an eye.
It's like getting a peek under the hood of the brain just before it acts.
Yeah, think of it as a shortcut to understanding those subtle prompts.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really get a handle on these subtle triggers, we kind of need a quick look back at how behavior was traditionally studied.
Right.
Because for a long time, early American psychology was dominated by what now seems like a surprisingly rigid set of rules.
It's sort of a tale of two different camps, two contrasting approaches. On one side, you had behaviorism.
Skinner, right?
Yeah, championed by B.F. Skinner. Its core idea, operant conditioning, was pretty straightforward. Reward a behavior, it increases. Punish it, it decreases. Simple.
And Skinner really believed this applied across the board.
You did. He thought virtually any behavior, whether it was a pigeon, a rat, or a person, could be shaped this way using rewards and punishments. He even famously said, a pigeon is a rat is a boy. He was looking for these universal, predictable rules.
Okay, and while operant conditioning is often right, I mean, it works a lot.
It does.
It fell short in some really important ways, didn't it? Our source points out some glaring examples.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
infant rats or monkeys becoming more attached to abusive mothers.
Which makes no sense under simple reward punishment.
None at all. Or humans staying in love with abusive partners. These behaviors just didn't fit the neat rules.
Yeah.
It kind of hinted that something deeper, maybe more innate, was going on.
Right.
And that's where ethology came in. It emerged in Europe really as direct counterpoint.
A different philosophy entirely.
Totally. Ethologists loved behavioral variety. They studied animals out in their natural habitats, not just labs.
Okay.
They wanted to, as they put it, interview an animal in its own language. There's this great adage they had.
Oh, yeah.
Studying rat social behavior in a cage is like studying dolphin swimming behavior in a bathtub.
Okay, that paints a picture. So they were focused on the real world.
Exactly. They were looking for evolution's fingerprint on behavior,
Ethologists weren't just looking for that simple stimulus response thing.
Not at all. They were asking different questions. What's the behavior, objectively? What specifically triggered it? Was it learned or was it instinct? How did it evolve? And, crucially, what's its adaptive value out there in the wild?
They embraced the complexity.
They reveled in it, all the variety evolution had created. It was a real contrast to the lab coat behaviorists looking for universal laws.
And understanding this difference, this focus on nuance and variety, is pretty crucial for getting human complexity, right? Which is where we're going.
Precisely. It sets the stage perfectly.
Okay, so now let's jump into how all sorts of sensory information prompts action, often in ways that are, well, barely detectable. It's not just about what we consciously see or hear.
Right. Think about the animal kingdom first. Vocalizations. They're used for all sorts of things. Intimidation, claiming territory, seduction.
Birds singing, stags roaring, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But here's a subtle human parallel, Sapolsky points out. When female pandas ovulate, their vocalizations get higher in pitch, just slightly. And male pandas prefer this higher pitch. Now, get this. The same subtle shift in vocal pitch happens in human females during ovulation, and males unconsciously prefer it too.
Wow, that's subtle.
Very. And visual cues are everywhere, right? Dogs doing that play bow.
Yeah, crow.
Birds strutting their amazing plumage. Monkeys doing those threat yawns, showing their canines. And then there are those universal cute babiness cues we all respond to.
Oh, yeah, the big eyes.
Big eyes, rounded forehead, shortened snout. These things instinctively drive mammals, including us humans, to care for young. Stephen Jay Gould apparently noted how Walt Disney nailed these cues when he turned rodents into Mickey and Minnie.
He tapped into our biology.
Uncannily well. And remember, many animals are signaling in ways we can't even detect.
Right, beyond our senses.
Yeah, mammals using pheromones, these chemical signals carrying info about sex, age, health, stuff we barely register consciously, if at all.
And snakes seeing infrared?
Snakes seeing infrared, electric eels courting with electric songs, bats using ultrasonic jamming. It just shows how much communication happens outside our limited human sensory world.
And here's a really striking point you mentioned from the source. The dominant sense for a species vision for us, maybe smell for a rat, often gets the most direct line to the limbic system.
That's right, the brain's emotional hub.
So for rodents, smell can trigger emotion almost instantly. A direct pathway.
Like a superhighway, straight to their feelings, bypassing a lot of conscious thought.
Okay, right. Let's get into the really mind-bending stuff now. Subliminal and unconscious cueing. It's one thing to see how, I don't know, seeing a weapon changes your brain state.
Sure, that's obvious.
But tons of these fleeting, minimal sensory triggers happen so fast, or they're so faint, we don't consciously clock them, yet they profoundly influence us.
It's actually incredible how our brains latch onto these things without us knowing. There are studies showing people think potato chips taste better just because they hear crunching sounds, even if those sounds are fake.
No way.
Yeah. Or we tend to like a totally neutral picture. More if a smiling face was flashed for just a fraction of a second beforehand. Too fast to consciously see.
So it primes you emotionally.
Exactly. Or another one, if people read the word ocean, maybe buried in some text, they're slightly more likely afterwards to choose Tide detergent from a lineup.
And they probably think they have a good reason for choosing it.
They do. They'll rationalize it. Oh, I like the packaging or whatever. But the prime tilted the scales. These tiny cues shape behavior in seconds, unconsciously.
Okay, now let's turn to a really heavy, unsettling example the book dives into. Race as a sensory cue.
A difficult but crucial area.
Our brains are just incredibly attuned to skin color. Apparently, if you flash a face for less than 1/10 of a second, way too fast for conscious recognition, people can still guess the race better than chance.
Yeah. We might consciously say we judge character, not color.
But our brains notice, fast. As Sapolsky puts it, our brains sure as hell note the color real fast.
And brain scans show differences within just 100 milliseconds. That's incredibly quick.
What happens?
Subliminally, the amygdala that's our fear and threat detector activates more strongly in response to other race faces. And this effect is stronger in people who already show higher levels of implicit racial bias.
So a near instantaneous fear or alert signal.
Pretty much. There's research by Elizabeth Phelps showing fear conditioning, like associating a face with a mild shock, happens faster for other race faces. People also tend to judge neutral other race faces as looking angrier.
But what about when we do have time to process consciously?
Ah, that's key. If the face is shown long enough for conscious processing, then other brain areas kick in. Specifically, the anterior cingulate and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC.
The thinking parts of the brain.
Right, the regions involved in cognitive control and regulation, they activate and actually inhibit that initial amygdala fear response. It's the frontal cortex stepping in, saying, hold on, let's think about this. Executive control.
Wow. So there's this initial flash, then maybe correction, but that initial flash has consequences.
Huge consequences. Let's talk about a study by Joshua Carell. It's particularly chilling, honestly.
Okay.
Subjects played a video game where they had to quickly decide whether to shoot someone who popped up on screen. The instruction was, shoot only if they're holding a gun.
High pressure situation.
Very. Now, EEG readings showed that just seeing a black individual's face evoked a stronger P200 waveform in the brain. That happens in under 200 milliseconds. Think of it as the brain's rapid threat alert signal.
And this happened whether they were armed or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Regardless of armament. But then, just milliseconds later, another brain wave comes in the N200 waveform. This one reflects inhibitory controls like the frontal cortex saying, wait, reassess.
Right, the hold on a sec signal.
Right. And that N200 signal was less evoked by black individuals compared to white individuals in this study.
So more initial threat, less subsequent inhibition.
Precisely. And here's the kicker. A higher ratio of P200, threat, to N200, inhibition, directly correlated with a higher likelihood of mistakenly shooting an unarmed black individual in the game.
That's deeply disturbing. It sounds like the brain's automatic processes are creating a dangerous bias in that split second.
It's a critical, very unsettling finding. But, and this is important, The source emphasizes it's not necessarily inevitable.
Okay.
There are exceptions, and Sapolsky mentions that subtle manipulations rapidly change the amygdaloid response. We'll get into that more later, teasing chapter 11, but it highlights this incredibly fast thalamus-amygdala shortcut in the brain.
A quick and dirty path.
Yeah. Sensory info zips straight to the amygdala, the alarm center, super fast, but it often sacrifices accuracy for speed. The amygdala yells threat before the more deliberative frontal cortex can fully process the situation, and the consequences can be devastating.
So, beyond race, what other kinds of subliminal visual info affect us?
Oh, plenty. The gender of a face, processed within about 150 milliseconds. Social status cues, like someone looking right at you with open posture versus looking away, kind of hunched.
Dominant versus submissive.
Right. The brain distinguishes that difference in mere 40 milliseconds. Tiny fraction of a second.
Wow. And what about beauty?
Ah, beauty. Yeah, it triggers powerful subliminal responses. Across cultures, attractive people tend to be judged as smarter, kinder, more honest.
The halo effect.
Exactly. We're more likely to vote for attractive candidates, hire attractive people, and they even tend to get lighter sentences in court. It's quite pervasive. There's even a brain region, the medial orbitofrontal cortex, that seems to assess both facial beauty and the moral goodness of an action.
Fascinating link. And eyes are particularly powerful, aren't they?
Hugely powerful. Studies show that the emotion we read in a face often comes primarily from the eyes.
Makes sense.
They have this sort of implicit power to make us behave better. Just putting up pictures of eyes near a bus stop reduced littering. In an office coffee room, a picture of eyes tripled the amount people paid into the honor box.
Like we feel watched.
Exactly. It triggers that subtle feeling of being observed, which tends to curb antisocial behavior.
Okay, what about unconscious smells? Olfactory cues.
Right. Even though our sense of smell is, much weaker than a rat's.
Way smaller part of our brain.
Yeah, like 3% versus maybe 40% for rat. But Sapolsky says we still have unconscious olfactory lives. Our olfactory system has direct lines to the limbic system, that emotional center.
So smells can bypass conscious thought, too.
They can. We talked about pheromones in animals. Well, there are reports of milder versions in humans, like the Wellesley effect, menstrual cycles synchronizing among women living together, though that one's a bit debated.
Okay.
But, more importantly, pheromones can signal fear. There was this study where people sniffed armpit sweat collected from others.
Ew. Okay.
Kind of gross, but interesting. One group had just done a relaxed run. The other group had just done a terrifying skydive. Subjects couldn't consciously tell the difference between the sweat samples.
But their brains could.
Their brains could. Sniffing the terrified sweat caused amygdala activation, a bigger startle response to a sudden noise, and made them more likely to interpret ambiguous facial expressions as fearful.
So if the people around you literally smell scared, your brain nudges you towards feeling scared, too.
That's the implication. Your brain tilts toward concluding you might be in danger as well. It's an unconscious contagion of fear.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about how the outside world sneaks into our brains unconsciously. But what about signals from inside our own bodies?
Ah, yes. Interoceptive information. Super important. Our brains are constantly getting messages from our body about its internal state. Are you hungry? Is something aching? Are you tense? That flutter in your stomach.
Right.
And this internal information profoundly influences our behavior and emotions.
This connects to that old theory, the James-Lange theory of emotion, right?
Exactly. It flips the usual script. Instead of seeing a lion, feeling terrified, and then your heart races,
It suggests
you subliminally perceive the lion, your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, and then your conscious brain reads those bodily signals and concludes, wow, my heart is pounding, I must be terrified.
So the feeling follows the physical response.
In essence, yes. You decide what you're feeling based on interpreting these rapid signals from your body.
Is there evidence for this? It sounds kind of counterintuitive.
There's some compelling supporting evidence. For instance, studies where forcing depressed people to smile actually makes them report feeling a bit better.
Like Amy Cuddy's power poses.
Exactly. Taking on a dominant posture, standing tall, hands on hips can lower stress hormones like cortisol and make people report feeling more dominant and confident. It seems the body can cue the mind.
So the body talks back to the brain.
It definitely influences it. Now, the strict James-Lange theory has critiques like, your heart races for lots of reasons. How does the brain know if it's fear or excitement? And some autonomic responses are pretty slow.
Right.
But the core idea holds weight. Interoceptive information does influence emotions, even if it doesn't solely determine them. Key brain regions involved in social emotions,
Yeah.
the PFC, insor cortex, ACC, the amygdala, they all receive tons of input about our internal bodily state.
And this links to things like pain and aggression.
Yes, pain is a reliable trigger for aggression, and it activates these same emotion processing regions. But here's a really crucial distinction Sapolsky makes.
Okay.
Pain doesn't universally cause aggression. Instead, it seems to amplify pre-existing tendencies,
Meaning?
meaning pain tends to make already aggressive individuals more aggressive. But for individuals who are typically unaggressive, pain might actually make them less aggressive, perhaps more withdrawn or fearful. It interacts with personality.
That's a really important nuance.
It is. And there are even subtler interoceptive effects. Think of the frontal cortex and willpower.
Okay. Mental effort.
Yeah. Roy Baumeister's research showed that after people exert significant mental effort on a hard cognitive task, using up that frontal cortex energy, they subsequently tend to become more aggressive, less empathetic, less charitable, less honest in opportunities that follow soon after.
Like the frontal cortex is just tired.
That's the metaphor. It's like the frontal cortex says, screw it, I'm depleted. I don't have the energy right now to be my best self or think hard about my fellow human.
And this ties into blood sugar. Seriously.
It does. Blood glucose levels demonstrably drop during these demanding frontal tasks. And giving people a sugary drink can actually improve frontal function shortly afterward.
So being hangry is a real biological thing.
Pretty much. When people are hungry, low blood glucose, they tend to become less charitable and more aggressive. So the amount of energy, literally fuel, reaching the brain, and specifically that effortful frontal cortex, significantly influences whether we manage to do the harder, more correct thing versus taking the easier, maybe more impulsive or selfish route.
Wow. Okay, so body state matters immensely. What about words? We know words have power consciously, but unconsciously too.
Oh, absolutely. Unconscious priming with words has a huge impact on both prosocial and antisocial behaviors.
Give me an example.
The classic prisoner's dilemma game is perfect. It's a game theory scenario testing cooperation versus self-interest.
Right.
If you simply label the game the Wall Street game before people play, they tend to act much more competitively, less cooperatively.
Right.
But if you call the exact same game the community game, people become significantly more cooperative. Just changing the name primes a whole different mindset.
That's powerful framing.
It is. And it gets even subtler. You can embed words like help, share, harmony, warm, fuzzy, prosocial words into some unrelated task people do before the game.
Like a word scramble or something.
Exactly. Or competitive words like rank, power, compete. And just exposure to those words unconsciously shifts how cooperatively or competitively they play the game moments later.
And this isn't like they're reading some big philosophical text.
Not at all.
Yeah.
As Sapolsky says, this isn't subjects reading either Christ's Sermon on the Mount or Ayn Rand, just an innocuous string of words.
Yeah.
Yet it tweaks behavior.
It reminds me of that Nobel Prize-winning work by Kahneman and Tversky on framing effects.
Absolutely related. They're a classic example. People are way more likely to approve a medical procedure if it's described as having a 95% survival rate than if it's described as having a 5% death rate.
Even though it's the exact same outcome.
Identical numbers, totally different psychological impact due to the framing. Words matter immensely, consciously and unconsciously.
So even things we don't pay attention to can steer us.
Definitely. Even subtler things in the environment, like people express stronger egalitarian principles if there just happens to be an American flag visible in the room while they're asked.
Really?
Yeah. Or in English football matches, a researcher pretending to be injured got helped much more often if he was wearing the home team's sweatshirt compared to a rival team's or a neutral one. Group identity, visually cued.
We respond to these tribal cues instantly.
Very quickly, and sometimes negatively. Like seeing conservatively dressed Hispanic pairs speaking Spanish in train stations led white commuters nearby to express more negative attitudes toward Hispanic immigrants moments later. Just overhearing the language acted as a trigger.
That leads into multiple group identities too, right? Like the Asian American women math test example.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Asian American women took a math test. If they were subtly primed beforehand to think about their racial identity, tapping into Asians are good at math, stereotype, they perform better.
Okay.
But if they were primed to think about their gender identity, tapping the midcat, women are worse at math. Stereotype, they performed worse. Same people, different prime, different outcome. Shows how context activates different parts of our identity and the associated expectations.
Fascinating. What about the bystander effect? Does that fit here, the idea that more people means less help?
Ah, the bystander effect, or Genovese syndrome. It's usually known incorrectly, based on the Kitty Genovese myth.
So the myth isn't quite right.
The reality is more nuanced. The bystander effect does happen, but primarily in non-dangerous situations. Think, someone drops papers. The cost of helping is low, maybe just inconvenience. In those cases, responsibility diffuses, and more people can mean less help.
But not in emergencies.
Interestingly, no. In clearly dangerous situations, think an assault. The more people present, the more likely individuals are to step forward and intervene. Perhaps reputation or shared assessment of danger plays a role then, so context is key.
Okay, that's a crucial correction. What about social context effects on men specifically?
Yeah, the book notes some rapid effects. When women are present, or even when men are just prompted to think about women or mating,
What happens?
they tend to become more risk-taking in various domains. They show steeper temporal discounting, meaning they value immediate rewards much more highly than larger future rewards.
Impulsive choices.
Somewhat, yeah. They also spend more on conspicuous consumption, like luxury items. And in some experimental settings, they become more aggressive, like punishing opponents more harshly in a game.
Trying to signal status, maybe?
That's the likely interpretation. But again, it's not inevitable. If the context is one where status is achieved through being prosocial or generous,
Then what?
then men might actually show increased generosity, potentially as a mating signal in that specific environment. So the social environment unconsciously shapes behavior, even moment to moment. And our physical environment does too.
Right, the broken windows idea.
Exactly, the broken window theory, proposed by Wilson and Kelling. Their idea was that small signs of disorder, litter, graffiti, broken windows create a feeling that nobody cares, which can lead to a slippery slope of larger disarray and eventually more serious crime.
It implies a kind of social permission for bad behavior.
Sort of, yeah. That if minor rules are broken, maybe bigger rules can be too. This thinking heavily influenced policing in New York City under Mayor Giuliani in the 90s.
The zero-tolerance policy for minor infractions.
That was it. And it was followed by a steep drop in serious crime. Though critics argue crime was already falling nationally, so it's debated how much effect it truly had.
But there were other tests.
Yes. A clever study by Kieskaiser in the Netherlands provided strong support. They deliberately created minor norm violations in public spaces.
Like what?
For example, they put up a sign forbidding chaining bicycles to a fence, but then chained several bikes there themselves.
Okay, setting up a violation.
Right. Then they watched if passersby were more likely to commit a different minor violation nearby, like taking a forbidden shortcut through a hedge, or littering flyers left on their bikes.
And were they?
Significantly more likely. Seeing one norm broken made people more prone to break another unrelated norm. They littered more when nearby walls were graffitied. They even stole money from an envelope sticking out of a mailbox more often if there was litter strewn around the mailbox.
Wow. So disorder can be contagious.
It seems so. Sapolsky calls them big effects. Even hearing fireworks nearby associated with disorder or rule breaking made people more likely to litter. It suggests these environmental cues work unconsciously.
Okay, so the external world shapes us.
Right.
But can our brain also change how sensitive we are to the world? Alter our own senses?
Absolutely. The brain isn't just passively receiving information, it actively modulates sensitivity.
Like a dog pricking up its ears.
That's a simple, obvious example. But it happens more selectively, too. If you're hungry, for instance, you actually become more sensitive to the smell of food. Your threshold lowers.
How does that work?
Well, the brain sends neuronal projections back to sensory organs. So, low blood sugar might trigger neurons in the hypothalamus, which then sends signals down to stimulate nasal receptors specifically tuned to food smells, meaning fewer odor molecules are needed to trigger a response. Your brain is basically telling your nose, pay extra attention to food smells right now.
That definitely applies to human behavior. We're biased to look at faces, especially eyes.
We are. Sapolsky mentions a patient with Urbach-Wiethe disease, which damages the amygdala. She was terrible at recognizing fearful facial expressions.
Because the amygdala processes fear.
Right. And analysis showed she spent much less time looking at the eyes of faces compared to healthy people. But here's the interesting part. When researchers explicitly instructed her to focus on the eyes,
She got better.
she improved significantly at recognizing fear. So the amygdala isn't just detecting fear. It seems to automatically bias us where to look towards the eyes to gather that crucial emotional information in the first place.
That's fascinating. The brain directs its own input gathering.
Exactly. And similarly, psychopaths who often have amygdala abnormalities are also poor at recognizing fearful expressions, tend to look less at eyes, and improve somewhat when directed to focus on eyes. It fits the pattern.
And culture plays a role here too, in literally how we see things.
It does. Research shows people from more collectivist cultures, like China, tend to automatically look more at and later remember the background or contextual information in a picture.
Whereas individualistic cultures,
Like the US, tend to focus more on the main or focal object in the center, paying less attention to the background.
and it takes effort to switch.
It does. If you ask someone from one culture to adopt the perceptual strategy typical of the other culture, like asking an American to focus on context, their frontal cortex has to work harder. It shows that culture shapes even these fundamental perceptual habits, making the unnatural way feel effortful.
So bringing this all together, we've gone through a whirlwind tour of what happens just before we act. Sensory stuff, body signals, words, social cues, our environment.
It's a bombardment, really, all this information flooding our brains in those crucial seconds and minutes.
And the big takeaway seems to be,
I think the most important point Sapolsky makes here is this. In the moments right before we make some of our most consequential decisions, some of our best acts, some of our worst, we are far less rational and autonomous decision makers than we like to think.
we're not purely in the driver's seat.
Not nearly as much as we assume. So much of this varied information is subliminal. It's operating and shaping us completely beneath our conscious awareness, nudging us one way or another.
Which really makes you wonder, if our decisions are so profoundly influenced by all these rapid, unconscious cues just moments before, what does that truly imply for how much genuine free will we're actually exercising in those critical moments?
It's a deep question, definitely something worth mulling over. How much is choice, and how much is the product of everything that just happened in the last few seconds?
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these fascinating, subtle forces that shape our immediate behaviors. Really appreciate you trusting us to help you become well-informed.
Always a pleasure to explore this stuff.